Joining me tonight emerges Ed from Brisbane band Dolly Zoom. Thanks for joining me today, mate. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you going?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Excellent.
And first things first, is there a story behind the band named Dolly Zoom?
Um, Not anything sort of crazy. The name itself, I was just trolling through and down a YouTube rabbit hole and saw a video for the Dolly Zoom sort of filming technique. I had to watch. Remembered it was an awesome
Okay.
technique. It's sort of like when you're filming something and you move the camera towards the object as you zoom the camera out
Yeah,
at the
sure.
same time. So the object sort of stays the same, but the background and everything gets warped and stretched. I've always really liked that technique, so I just sort of suggested it as a band name because it's pretty. I thought it was a pretty cool sounding band name, and it's just sort of a happy accident that the actual meaning behind it, like when directors use that sort of thing, sort of align with the band's sort of general sound and the general aesthetic that we've got as well. So it's just sort of a happy little accident.
Wonderful. And
Yeah.
did you land on that band name pretty early on?
Um, to be honest, I can't quite remember exactly what it was. I can't remember if we had a fourth member or not yet. But it was very early on. We were not at all. We weren't really practicing much or anything. We were just sort of talking about starting a band. So it sort of did precede us actually playing anywhere.
Okay.
And weren't really toying with any other names either. It just sort of stuck. I think we're lucky from that point of view, not
Yeah.
jumping around.
Fair enough. And who are the band's most prominent influences?
I think if you were to ask each of us, we'd probably give different answers. For me personally, it'd definitely be Tame Impala, N83, Daft Punk as well. These sort of like electronic, very synthesizer heavy songs.
Nice.
And then other bands like Slow Dive and Porcupine Tree that are like more progressive sort of sounding rock bands as well that really influence us
And
too.
when you mentioned M83, do you like them throughout their catalog or?
Um, they're they're an interesting band because I do like a lot of their songs. Sometimes I find that uh, there's not much change sort of from album to album. I'm very much someone who likes to have a bit of variation
Yeah.
in the sound. I like sort of I really liked their newer album. I know it was quite polarizing for some people,
Okay.
but I liked how they went in a fairly different direction. I think they really pulled that off. But
Mm.
I do like them throughout their catalogue. Their earlier stuff, it's a bit sort of dreamier and a bit more cinematic, I guess you'd call it. Is
Mm.
still really nice. I love listening to those albums too.
Sweet. I'm pretty sure I missed the latest one, so I'll have a listen. I was a big fan in high school though.
Yeah, yeah. No, the latest one was sort of more like dancey, I guess you'd
Oh,
call it.
okay.
They're going for like sort of hookier songs.
Fair enough.
Yeah, compared to their old stuff. Yeah.
Nice. And last week you guys dropped your sophomore single, I Think You'd Know by Now. What can
hmm
you tell us about the tune? What kind of themes do you explore in it?
The song itself, lyrically, is about really not knowing where you stand
Mm.
with someone, and how it's sort of easy to misconstrue what someone's saying, depending on how you sort of feel about them at the time. Um, the I'm very much a fan of not necessarily having explicit meanings behind lyrics, because I always find when I try and write to a specific theme, it sounds like I'm trying to write to a specific theme.
Mm.
I like to try and find that sort of flow state of writing where you're not trying too hard, I guess. And it just when you try and write something and then it sort of reads like you're trying to write it. I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes any sense. But if, as a result, I find that it's probably quite interpretable for
Mm.
what the song itself is actually about. I mean, the sound of it itself, I guess it sort of sounds melancholic and nostalgic, and they're the sorts of themes and feelings that I get from it sonically. But yeah, the actual meaning, if it's more about interpreting what someone's saying and how that sort of affects you, I guess.
Okay. And how was the actual recording process for this track?
We record out of Bedlam Studios in
Okay.
Indooroopilly.
Nice.
It's actually where half of the Jensens live.
Yeah,
That's how we
of
got
course.
onto that band. Yeah. So we record with Brock Weston. He's the head engineer out of Bedlam. He's actually the drummer from the band Bugs
Mm.
as well. But yeah, he recorded us and then has helped mix and will be probably mixing out most of the EP as well. But yeah, it's a beautiful studio, and it's just such a nice setup there. And Brock's such an absolute champion. He's so easy to work with.
Yeah.
Just makes everything super simple.
Beautiful. And what was the writing or recording process for this single much different from the first one?
The writing, yes, it was a bit more work. I think compared to Easy For You. Easy For You was very flow state type writing. Just sort of one thing led to the next. I didn't really have to work too hard on it. I guess I think I wrote Easy For You in not a very long period of time, and then I think by now it sort of went over a few different makeovers. Most of our processes so far have been I'll write probably like the sort of the skeleton of the song, and then take it to the band, and we flesh it out to what you hear on the recordings. So it's very much a collaborative process. But okay. I think just from the fact that I have been sort of mucking around with writing music for a while, I just have sort of this back catalogue of, I guess, like I said, skeletons or just sort of structures of songs that we then take to the rest of the band, and we sort of work on it together.
And when you're talking about having structures and like demos of tracks, is this all instrumental or are they vocals?
There's vocals in there as well. I guess again the vocal, the lyric writing for me is something that I can be very nonsensical at times. So part of the reason why some of them are just sort of demo tracks, because they've got no lyrics. It's just sort of me humming or literally just spouting absolute shit into the microphone. But no, they usually have most of, I guess, the direction of the song. But you compare the demo to the finished product, and it's chalk and cheese. It goes from this skinny little, sort of lifeless thing to a fully fleshed out song.
What kind of things can we expect from your upcoming show at Miss Demeanour with Papperbok and Yuuca on the 28th of March?
It's sort of a synthesizer night as it's being sold. So it's sort of the focus is mainly on the keys in this coming up gig. Our live show, because we don't have much released, you'll hear pretty much our whole upcoming EP that we play live, plus a couple other songs that we're probably looking at putting on an album later next year.
Okay.
Our live songs are generally a bit sort of rockier than our recorded stuff. Lockie, our drummer, he's a great drummer and brings heaps of energy with him onto the stage. He's got a background of sort of heavier music, which I imagine a lot of drummers have, and he brings that influence onto our live set. So I'd say it sort of feels a bit more, it goes a bit harder than our recorded stuff, our live sessions.
Fair enough. And who are some of your favourite Queensland musicians at the moment?
At the moment, the last year or so, ever since meeting the Jensens, we've been pumping the Jensens a fair bit. That their latest album was a brilliant record. I really love that. Very, very Bowie, very Dark Side of the Moon. Hard to go past that record. We played a gig last year with a female artist called Lucy Dron. She's amazing. She doesn't have heaps of stuff up online yet. I think she's in the process of recording some songs. So she's sort of like a grunge, jazzy musician, and she just plays awesome music. And then another band that we've liked for a while as well as Polygon Woods. I don't know if you've played Polygon Woods on your show.
Yeah.
they have that lonerism era sound that I just love, that, just that psychedelic, floaty, epic music. I love their stuff. I'm really excited. I think they got some new stuff coming out pretty soon that I'm keen for as well.
Yeah, I believe it at the end of the month, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think I saw on Instagram they're going to drop something pretty soon, so that'll be awesome.
Hell yeah! And which release did you listen to the most of last year? It could be from anywhere.
Over last year, I think it'd probably be, in terms of a whole album, would probably be Little Dark Age by MGMT.
Oh, nice.
I was a little bit late on the uptake of that album. I kind of missed it when it first rolled round, and I've just been sort of pumping it since. It's just I just love it from end to end.
Yeah.
They're just a band that just are fresh every time. They never sound the same on any album, but it doesn't sound like they're trying too hard to sound differently, if you know what I mean as well. It sort of just, it seems to suit their sound. I think they're one of my favourite artists as well, MGMT.
Sweet, same. So it's holds up pretty highly to their previous work for you.
Yeah. Like, I really was. I love their first album, Oracular Spectacular. Their middle two, I didn't enjoy quite as much.
Oh, okay.
And then Little Dark Age sort of came back and brought them back to my attention. And I've been slowly making my way back through those two middle albums and seeing why I didn't really like them. I don't think they're quite as catchy for me. I'm a bit of a sucker for pop music in general.
Okay.
And
yeah, they're definitely not pop albums.
No, their middle two definitely aren't. They bookended with some more poppy albums, but those middle two, they do definitely delve into that sort of weird side of psychedelia, which I do like, but I like sort of dabbles of that. And like I said, I'm a sucker for pop, so the latest album is so good, that sort of synth pop catchiness.
Completely fair. And if you could write the soundtrack or score for any film, TV, or game, which would you pick and why?
We've actually received a couple comments that we sound like we could be on Stranger Things.
Oh, okay.
I would take that as a compliment. I've actually never seen Stranger Things. Catherine has, our keyboardist.
It's just like an 80s retro revivalist soundtrack, pretty much.
Yeah, just full synth. I imagine it's probably similar to the Blade Runner score music, which I absolutely love. The music in Blade Runner. I feel like it's part of the reason why it's one of my favourite movies. It's just the soundtrack itself. But if gun to my head, I'd probably say Blade Runner.
Fair enough. How did the new film stack up?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, nice.
Like I'm well aware of my bias towards certain things, and I think anything in the Blade Runner universe, I'm gonna just absolutely love.
Yeah, fair enough. And if you had to name one artist or record that has had the biggest influence on you, either personally or musically, who would you name and why?
It'd have to be Kevin Parker from Tame Impala. I feel like that's going to be a fairly cliched answer in the years to come. You know, he's already quite a household name. But I think it's just, to me, he's the single greatest musical influence on my life. But I feel like it sounds a bit odd to say, but I feel like he sort of awoke music in me in a weird sort of way.
Fair enough.
I remember listening to Lonerism. That was probably the first time I've listened to, especially Mind Mischief. I remember distinctly sort of a point in time where I listened to Mind Mischief, and it just changed how I was listening to it. And then from there, I was sort of like, whoa, music is actually amazing. Like it was sort of like I think it awoke the creative side within me. It was sort of just like, how does he make such an incredible sounding record? And that sort of, from there is where I moved into more thinking about how to write music and that sort of thing. So I'd have to say Kevin Parker.
And so do you hold Lonerism as your favourite album of his, or is it just kind of that nostalgic feel?
It's very hard to say. I think Currents to me would probably have to be my favourite out of his four.
Same.
Lonerism is a very close second. Like I'm not big on sort of rating and ranking music like
Fair
that.
enough.
It's so relative to me. Like some days I'll be in a sort of Currents mood, and then some days I'm in a Lonerism mood. You know, it sort of depends on my mindset at the time as to what I like the most. But again, I'm well aware of my bias as well towards Kevin Parker. Like anything he touches, I think is gold, and I'm aware that some people don't think that. But I can't fault almost anything he's done, and I realise that's bias talking, not me.
That's all right, man. And
I think we've all got it right.
Oh, definitely.
You have to make sure you're aware of it so that you're not blindly selling something.
Exactly. Can you name a specific artist that has been able to get you into a genre that you haven't previously enjoyed?
The drummer in our band, Lockie, got me into Porcupine Tree quite a few years ago. I don't know if you've heard of Porcupine Tree.
I've heard of them,
yeah. They're a progressive rock band from the UK. The frontman, Stephen Wilson, he's been around. I think he's like in his 50s or something. He looks like he's about 25, but he's in his 50s, and he's just been around for so long, and they've got something over like 200 and something songs.
Jeez.
And they're just the sheer size of their catalogue and then from there you can go into so many different bands and genres because they've been around for so long. They have such a varied sound as well. And progressive rock was not really something I had got into. Like I was a bit of a fan of Pink Floyd, and I guess you would call them progressive rock to a degree. But these guys are sort of definitely progressive rock, and they have times where they go a lot harder and sort of darker as well. But they use a lot of distorted guitars. And they have these really long jams, and I wasn't a massive fan of using a lot of heavy distortion in music until Porcupine Tree, really. Right, where they sort of showed me that you can use a distorted guitar to sort of express emotion rather than just sort of an increase in volume and like sound and noise. It was sort of like the hardest hitting part of the song that distort the hell out of the guitar, and you're like, oh yes, that feels good, that feels right. And I'd never really thought of it like that. To me, before that, metal and heavy metal had just been sort of like noise music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where if you haven't been exposed to it in the right way, I feel like that's how a lot of people view that sort of genre. And Porcupine Tree allowed me to sort of. It was a nice entrance into that heavier style of music, and it sort of showed me what the heavier style is about, I guess.
Fair enough. And so, are they still making music today?
They haven't for a while. I don't think they've sort of officially broken up. I know Stephen Wilson's doing his own sort of stuff, and each member of the band is in separate bands. There's been calls for years for them to do a reunion tour, so I think they probably will. I really hope they do. I'd love to see them.
Cool. And what else can we expect from Dolly Zoom in the not too distant future?
This year we've got another single coming out fairly soon, hopefully, probably the next 2 or 3 months, and then an EP later this year. We've got another gig that we are announcing on Wednesday. We can't actually say anything yet, but we're releasing it and we're announcing it on Wednesday. And then in the sort of slightly more distant future, we're looking at an album next year, but very hard to lock those things in.
Yeah, fair.
But the plan at the moment is EP end of this year. Yeah. Maybe a tour after that, and then an album the following year.
Nice, exciting times, man. And
sorry?
Exciting times, dude.
Oh yes, very much.
And lastly, if you only had a few words to describe your latest single, which few words would you use?
A few words. So 3 words I've got.
Oh, you can have as many or as few as you'd like. It's up to you.
Yeah. When you submit it to Spotify, they make you select 2 moods out of this sort of mood board thing they give you, and we always end up landing on sad and sexy. So I'll have to say sad and sexy.
Perfect, dude. If that doesn't capture someone's attention, I don't know what will.
I know, right? It's this juxtaposition between sad and sexy that you're drawn to it.
Exactly. How could you ignore?
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me, Ed.
Thanks, Callum.
My pleasure,
Thank you very much. You're doing the Lord's work over at Emerge. It's really good to have like this sort of thing where you can reach out and actually talk to people who are really passionate about music and are willing to give a voice to local artists and things. Sometimes it feels like you don't get that opportunity when you're talking to these you know, you can't just talk to someone at Triple J, and it can be really hard to feel like you're actually reaching out to people that want to hear your music. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Oh, no worries at all, man. It's a privilege. Thanks for your kind words.
Thank you. No worries.
Catch you at your show.
Easy, Caleb. Thanks, mate. We'll see you there.